Today is the 12th day of August 2024. It is 7:23 in the morning, and this is the Morning Muse. Pretty excited this morning, obviously. There's a bunch of things that I want to cover. 10 minutes is not very long to cover much of anything, but I'm going to try. So the primary thing that occurred to muse upon this morning, the prompt arose, the question arose in the mind, and it was, what is it that protects against the corrupting influence of the handling of money? So conducted a finance meeting with the crew on Saturday morning. Not quite 48 hours ago now. And we were talking about weighted average cost of capital. And I've also been exposed to this concept of dynamical systems theory, I think is how it's referred to, which is a fancy way of saying setting up, I think it's at least triune systems, so triangular systems. So if you have a polar system, you can establish a tension between the two poles, and you can establish some kind of stable, relatively stable phenomena. But it's generally, in my experience, nowhere near as stable as a system of three. So when there's three anchors, so to speak, you end up with you can establish very stable systems. So with respect to fiduciary duty, so in the finance meeting, the board is trying to discern, figure out, assign responsibilities to personnel. And there's that custody is a fiduciary duty. It's like you are given custody as an agent of the firm you're given custody of certain assets. And with respect to cash or currency or money, that's one of the trickiest ones, because it's what we say fungible, as in it's really easy to do away with, lose, spend. It's what it's for. That's what currency is for. It's for spending, conducting transactions. So how do you bind that? How do you stabilize the custody? It's a perennial problem. It's ancient. It probably applies at all levels of analysis, but this is a 10-minute exercise, so we're going to keep it confined to economics and corporate finance specifically. So the three things that spontaneously occurred in response to the query in the mind were, one, a vow of poverty, and then second, the board of directors itself, and then thirdly, commitment to a particular return on investment. So return on investment, I think most people are familiar with that. I think that's a pretty simple thing for people to understand. If you if you're conducting business, you invest your energies, in this case, in the form of US dollars or ounces of gold or whatever your unit of measure is. For us, it's US dollars. You say, I'm going to invest this measure, this many dollars in this particular hard asset or project, and over a predetermined period of time, expect, dangerous word, but necessary for rational analysis. Expect a particular rate of return. So I don't think so the point there is that that's an easy one for people to grasp. Most people, I think, intuitively get that. The more difficult one to grasp is the weighted average cost of capital. And then here comes the dynamical system. There's a relationship. So weighted average cost of capital, I cannot do justice in a couple of minutes here, so I'm not going to try. I will put the notes. So this was the beauty. One of the beauties this morning. So I ran through one of the language models. I said something like, I'll put it in the notes to this recording so that you can see what I'm talking about. But it says, what is the state formulaically state the formula for return on investment and weighted average cost of capital, and explain how those two measures relate to one another. So then the relationality, the relationship between those two measures, so you have two rational measures that assume the particulars of measure. I think that's a sloppy way of saying that, but I don't know how to do better than that right now. You say, I did it already. I said I'm measuring in US dollars and I'm measuring in time, for example. So those, you take certain units of measure for granted, and then given those fundamentals, we say we're going to measure capital, and we're going to measure expectation of return. And then we're going to observe the two of those in relation to a particular, you could say, experiment, I think. So the project, we're going to invest in this particular project. That's the experiment. That is what we concern ourselves with. With respect to the particularized I'm losing the thread here. The particularized, I'm coming back to the thread of how do you protect? How do you protect from the corrupting influence of the handling of money? Okay, so you are given, and as an agent, particular monies. And then the board, the whole identity, the going concern, the firm as such, says, how do we appropriately bound that custodian? And we do it through the vow of poverty, is akin to a budget, by my way of thinking. And then the board of directors is the one setting that. That's a body of more than one person. So you set up, and that should probably be at least three, where you have opponent processing happening within that board of directors. They're the ones setting the units of measure setting the expectations, and then you have amongst all parties commitment to a particular return on investment, which is it's literally a ratio. It's a explicit, rational mode, I suppose. I don't quite know how to say that other than to say that it is a commitment to it's an explicit commitment to a rational measure of the consequence of agreed upon procedure. I'll leave it at that. And it is 33 minutes past, which means that it's time to wrap this up. Thank you for your very careful attention.